right, we started the review on this file, and we weren't able to finish it all in the time allotted. Our guardian ad litem had some obligations as well, and so we reconvened. Previously, the review for mother and father were separated, and we've made our way, I think, probably through the majority of the review as it relates to Ms. Chanel Deakins, who is rejoining us by Zoom. As it relates to Mr. Aaron Deakins, those facts need to be explored on record. So I'm looking forward to any other comments as it relates to Ms. Chanel Deakins' case, as well as the updates on Mr. Deakins' case, and then I'll make the ruling as necessary for purposes of today's review, which is also a permanency planning hearing. May I have the names of our participants, please?
Lee Heiss, lawyer, guardian ad litem.
Ms. Stasia Thomas, counsel for the department. Ms. Madrid.
Francesca Madrid, foster care worker from Fostering Solutions.
Michael Brooks, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Age before beauty.
Okay, Michael Brooks, I represent the father, Aaron Deakins. Mr. Deakins.
Aaron Deakins, father.
Angie Borders on behalf of Chanel Deakins' mother, who is appearing via Zoom. Chanel.
Chanel Deakins.
All right, thank you. Well, let's go back to you, Ms. Heiss. Any reports or updates from you that you might like to share? And we have Mr. Deakins as well.
Yes, we asked Mr. Deakins to leave the room for Ms. Deakins' hearing. So to reiterate, I visited with the children in person a few times during visits with their mother. And Stormy has asked to be placed with her mother. My perception is that it's best for the other two children to preserve their placement, to have Stormy, the placement is not negotiable, that Stormy is disruptive and not following instructions, and it's a danger. It's a danger to her. So in order to preserve the placement for the oldest and youngest, to have Stormy out of the house, I think would have a very good effect for the kids. I'm going to get back to my notes instead of pulling on my memory. We aren't saying that mother has completed services and benefited from services to the extent that we don't expect more progress, but at this point there isn't another foster home available for Stormy, and we don't want to go to less home-like environments, so that mother has done a lot of services and benefited from services to the extent that we think it's time to give this a try. Mother has the resource of her mother there in the home, and Stormy is so unhappy that we think that this would calm down some of the mental health problems if they're able to be controlled by Stormy. At least we can tell. It is not without issues, I will grant. So I would like to observe some visits with the kids and Mr. Deakins, specifically because the CTAC, the child trauma assessments, indicate that the children's bonds with the dad are secured. So it sounds to me on a piece of paper that that's a good relationship for the kids to explore, expand. Anyway, but I haven't done that yet, and I will. I believe in the court report, it indicates dad's hoping for independent housing before we really all jump in and support more, but I haven't gotten that information from dad, only in the court report. So making sure that there isn't unwanted contact between mom and dad. The kids need to trust that mom and dad are following services. It's really disruptive, Stormy, I guess, especially trust when that's violated. And I do not oppose the request for protective order in the court reports. I think this is an exception to the rule where the parents are, we can summarize for each parent how the other person's mental health is going, because it is significant and important that they understand the mental health of the other person parenting their children, but they don't need to know specifics, and it doesn't, if the HIPAA rights could be respected in this family. I think that finishes my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Testimony today as it relates to anything new or updates on Ms. Deacons or, of course, Mr. Deacons, Ms. Thomas?
Thank you, Honor. I was just like, I guess some guidance. Would we like to have Mr. Deacon's full review with Ms. Deacon's present, or is that fine with the court at this time?
It's come to my attention through the review that we had the other day with Ms. Deacons, that both of these parties have, specifically Ms. Deacons has asked for a modification of bond conditions so that the two can talk about parenting time. And of course, we need to know what their relationship looks like and how that's progressing. I know there's a request for a divorce, but also we have continued concern about contact as well as that request to modify the bond conditions. So I'm not, frankly, if they are not concerned about refraining from that type of contact, I don't think it's necessary for the court to take time and resources from its docket as well as the attorneys that are involved in this case to conduct these reviews separately. So for those reasons, the short answer to your question is yes, please go ahead and proceed with any proofs you may have as it relates to either parent at this time.
Thank you, Honor. I appreciate that. Ms. Madrid, I'm sorry, can Ms. Madrid please be sworn in?
You swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Ms. Madrid, just as relates to Ms. Deacons, were there any updates since our last review hearing that you would like to put on the record at this time?
As it relates to Miss Deacons, no.
Okay. And as far as Mr. Deacons, the court report indicates, well, let me ask first, are there any updates or modifications to his portion for the documents that were provided to the court as relates to Mr. Deacons that need to be updated or modified?
No.
Okay. And as relates to Mr. Deacons, how would you generally describe his level of compliance with and benefit from his case service plan?
I would say he is compliant with his case service plan. He is engaged in individual counseling through Catholic Charities. He is engaged in DVAP with Mr. Don Bailey. He also is employed through Express Staffing at Antivia, and he has been attending some of the children's psychotropic consent or medication reviews this reporting period. And he also did participate in the psychological in June. I just still don't have those results back yet.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And it seems like based on your court report, he's also attending every parenting time and all of that is going well.
Yes.
Okay. And for your recommendations, are you asking the court to consider the transition to unsupervised parenting time for him during this review period as well?
We would be moving to expanding visits as well as including some unsupervised time.
Wonderful. And I know that one of the things that Ms. Heiss brought up and that is also in your court report is the housing situation. Are there any updates to that particular component of his case service plan?
Ms. Madrid, before you respond, if you could get a little closer to your microphone, we can hear Ms. Thomas very well, but yours is a little more muffled.
Okay. I was just gonna say that the only update I have is that Mr. Deacons did tell me he was looking for his own independent housing. And he would have to give any more recent update on if he has secured his own housing yet.
Okay. And so you haven't been able to observe where he's currently residing?
No, I have not conducted a home visit yet.
Okay. And as it relates to Stormy, there's this really great bond with Mr. Deacons and he's doing everything that's being asked of him. Is the housing the only issue that has prevented the agency from considering him for placement for Stormy at this time?
We would like to see some more consistent compliance and benefiting from services. I know there was a couple no-shows with Catholic Charities, and I know this is his second time being referred to DVAP. But other than that, I will be assessing his home in the next reporting period.
Okay, thank you. And are there any other updates that you would like to provide for the record, either that are not in the court report or you want to highlight from the court report?
Not at this time.
Okay. And I know that there's been some discussions about the parents having contact. I guess, can you just give us a little bit of an update on what that has meant for the children and I guess Mr. Deacon's response to all of that?
Okay, ladies, I'm just gonna ask you to slow down a little bit, because it's, you know, our sound system in the courtroom is not as good as you can hear on Zoom. So if you could slow down and speak clearly, that would be great.
Would you like me to re-ask the question, Your Honor?
I think that could be good. We did have your signal break up just a little bit while you were speaking.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I am currently in the car, so that might be an issue for a little bit. Ms. Madrid, as it relates to the contact between Mr. and Mrs. Deacons, can you provide the court with an update on how that has impacted the children and the parents' responses to addressing that concern?
Yes, so as of right now, I have not had any concrete concern or incident other than the lawnmowing incident, which we spoke already about at the last review. Both parents seem to be honest about what happened as far as like communication, the request with grandma and things like that. Both parents seem to be working on addressing those concerns. I have spoke to Mr. Deacons and he has asked me and stated that he would like to continue a relationship with Ms. Deacons.
Okay, slow down, Ms. Madrid, please slow down.
Sorry. He has stated and continued to state that he would like to continue a relationship with Ms. Deacons. However, Ms. Deacons has continued to state that she does not want a relationship with Mr. Deacons, and she has continued to be compliant with her case service.
Thank you. With that, Your Honor, I have no further questions for Ms. Madrid and would move to admit the court reports as discussed at the hearing on Wednesday, which would include the report and its documents that were provided early July and then again for the most recent hearing.
Okay, so that's 2 court reports, trauma assessments for all 3 children. I have to tell you, this Catholic Charities letter about Mr. Deacons is incomplete. I can't even tell what the date is on it, so that's not ideal. I'd like another copy of that, and I'll address some of my other concerns about the reports from the counselors in a moment. There's also an email from July 8th from Ms. Brene Moore to Ms. Madrid regarding Stormy. There's another letter from Catholic Charities in much better shape, frankly, from Ms. Karen Gray from July regarding Aaron Deacons. There's a copy of the psychological evaluation of Ms. Chanel Deacons and a copy of a letter from Catherine Cobb regarding Chanel Deacons. So if there's anything else, you're gonna have to let me know, but that's what I have in front of me.
Yeah, and I believe that is the sum of what I have as well.
All right, counselors, objections or concerns about what you may have?
No objection.
No objection.
Thank you. All right, they are received then in their entirety, and cross-examination. Let's start with Ms. Borders. Any cross-examination?
I do not have any cross-examination.
Mr. Brooks?
Ms. Madrid, did I hear you correctly say that my client has completed the case service plan?
He is compliant.
Compliant, not completed. All right. And I believe, heard you say that he is actively and appropriately engaged in that case service plan.
Yes, he is.
The next question I have is, aside from housing, does he present any threat of harm to his 3 children at this time?
We would like to see him continue engaging consistently and benefiting from his individual counseling and DVAP. He is still stating that he would like a relationship with Ms. Deacons.
Well, the way you phrased it, it almost sounds like Ms. Deacons is the threat. Am I misinterpreting you?
I am trying to say that he is and continuously stating that he would like to continue to have a relationship with Miss Deacons. Although he is compliant with his case service plan, he would need to participate consistently and benefit from those services.
Just because I'm in a relationship.
As long as he continues to have that desire to have a continuing relationship with Mrs. Deacons, is that going to be a hurdle to reunification with his 3 children?
I believe that the best thing would be for him to continue to work towards those feelings and addressing the reasons that he wants to continue a relationship with Miss Deacons, although it brought his children into foster care.
Let me say it more directly, yes or no? Is she an impediment to the safety of these kids if that's what he wants to do, is have a relationship with
Yes.
her? Thank you. I have no further questions.
Ms. Heiss?
Ms. Madrid, could it be that the DAV program provider is telling us this is the 3rd time Dad has gone through domestic violence training? I think today you said 2nd time. It's my understanding it's his 3rd time.
Yes, and that was my mistake.
Thank you. And then also, another reason that you're not recommending that Stormy be placed with Dad is that she hasn't requested that. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Nothing further.
Redirect, Ms. Thomas?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you for, well, any recross, Ms. Borders, Mr. Brooks?
No,
Yes, just to clarify one of Mr. Brooks's questions, Ms. Madrid, Mr. Brooks asked you a question and you did answer it, but the answer was not really to his question. So I want to make sure I have an understanding. He interpreted your response to indicate that Miss Deacons, Chanel, is a threat to the children, rather than is that what you said?
No.
Thank you. And should I clarify that as of right now, do you believe Miss Deacons is a threat to her children?
No.
Thank you.
Okay. Did you want to recross?
no.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your testimony. Any other witnesses, Ms. Thomas?
Given my signal issue, I'm not going to call anyone else at this time.
Okay, Ms. Borders, anybody else you want us to hear from?
No, thank you. I handled everything Wednesday.
Mr. Brooks?
Aaron Deacons.
Okay, Mr. Deacons coming up to a witness stand.
You swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Right, proceed it well.
Mr. Deacons, first of all, with respect to the domestic violence charges against you, where are they at today?
I've accepted accountability of them and
You gotta speak up.
I've accepted the accountability of them and I'm in classes to handle better appropriate judgment of what I'm doing.
Well, have you pled guilty?
Yes.
Not guilty?
I
What?
pled guilty and I'm on probation for 9 months.
All right, that's what I wanted to know. And there are classes that you have been ordered to take under the probation program?
No, there are classes that I was taking from a request of Francesca. And my probation is going to continue it.
And probation is aware of the classes that you're taking?
Yes,
And they approve of them from, is it your impression they approve of them?
yes.
Right. How often do you get to see your kids?
I get 2 hours on Monday and then 2 hours on Wednesday every week.
And are you maintaining that schedule by going?
Yes,
Now, they are recommending that, is she your oldest child, Stormy?
my middle child.
Your middle child? They're recommending that child go back and live with her mother. You understand that?
I do.
Do you agree with that decision?
I agree that reunification, even if it's with their mother, is the best, but I would rather see all three of them go because I don't believe the other two are gonna handle it more appropriately.
Do you have a second choice, a tier two choice, so to speak?
I would rather see the other two go home before the one that she has no bond with,
Who's she?
Chanel,
She has no bond with whom?
Stormy.
How old is Stormy?
Stormy's 13.
Why do you say she has no bond?
Oh, it's what was stated in court
By whom?
by Francesca.
Is the bond broken from both perspectives, mom and child, or just in one direction?
I don't know that.
Well, what's your opinion?
I feel that Stormy likes to get what she wants, and with that, her mom is easily able to give that to her. So, I mean, I think that Stormy doesn't have a bond with her mom because it's that time of week. There's times that Stormy doesn't have a bond with me because of her feelings. And it happens to be that time that she's against her mom on things, and that's what everybody sees. But my honest opinion is I believe that Chanel does have a bond with Stormy, as she has a bond with the rest of the kids. And the acting out is just because Stormy's not getting what she wants at the point in time.
What kind of relationship do the other two kids have with their mom?
Ever since I could remember, it's been an amazing relationship with their mom.
I know this is gonna sound harsh, but I'm gonna ask it. So Stormy is the outlier of the three kids? She's the one who doesn't fit?
Yes, she's very emotional to things, and when it doesn't go her way, she has a problem with that direction.
And those personality characteristics are not evident in your other two kids?
No. Connor sometimes has fits when he doesn't get what he wants, but they don't go to the extent where he changes his moods completely. He's still a loving and caring boy, so.
So is there anything that you want the court to know about you, the relationship? Oh, housing. Where are you at with housing?
I've been talking to my mother further about moving in with her, so I have appropriate placement for the kids when they come and see me.
Where does she live?
That was the problem. She lives in Jackson.
Who says it's a problem?
I just feel like the distance between that and job placements and therapy, but my therapist has agreed to find a way to work with me.
Where do you work?
Right now, I was just recently laid off from my job.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like this court to know?
I just feel that it would be better to see all three kids go home.
Do you know what your wife's opinion about that is?
I do not.
Nothing further.
Cross-examination, Ms. Thomas?
Mr. Deacons, had you reported to Miss Madrid that you were already staying with your mother?
No, I had reported that I was staying with my aunt and that my permanent mailing address is with my grandfather. And I was
Okay.
talking with my mother.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And had you reported to Miss Madrid about the layoff from your employer?
No,
Okay. Is that a permanent layoff or is it just temporary and you intend to go back soon?
I believe it's a permanent.
Okay. Do you need any support in finding new employment?
I've been looking for new employment as it is.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Ms. Borders?
I, sorry, I do not have any questions for Mr. Dickens. Thank you.
Ms. Heiss?
Stormy's having this therapy with her mom. Do you want any resources like that with any of the kids?
I mean, if it gives me more time with my children, I would take it.
But you'd rather have more time outside of account, in addition to that, you want more time with your kids?
Yes,
All right, so, do you have this court report that we all got for today?
I do.
And in there, there's a trauma assessment. Did you see that?
I did.
You did?
Yes.
Okay, so when you have Stormy and the other kids with you, there are some recommendations in those trauma assessments for how to handle the children. Are you familiar with those recommendations?
I don't recall them right now.
Yeah, so they're kind of worded like a doctor would say it, but if you need any help with those recommendations, because we're watching for you to implement those recommendations in your parenting.
Right.
Okay, so if you need any help reading through or giving examples of what one of the recommendations would be, I hope you'll ask Francesca and the team can help you with that. We have a family team meeting and we could give examples of what those recommendations mean, break them down a little bit. Just a minute here, I do have. So, when you say you think it's best for all three kids to be reunited, not just Stormy, is there anything wrong with placement in your mind? Do you know anything that we should know?
I don't see a problem with placement with their mother because she has the housing, she has a job, I've never been against that.
The placement where they are with Crystal and I forget his name.
From what Lily told me in my last visit is that Crystal wanted them all placed back home anyways.
And then Crystal agreed to keep two if Stormy can find better resources, a better placement. Did you know that progress had been made?
I did hear about that, yes.
Okay, but you still, so is there anything wrong with placement? In addition, your first priority is all three go home with mom because mom's ready, is what you're saying, it sounds like.
I believe that Chanel is in the proper placement to have all three kids. I'm not a professional to be able to say that, but our bond with the other two kids, she never had a problem with them, just from growing with the kids and her. I know that her, parenting with the other kids has never been an issue.
Right, but do you see any behavior of Stormy's that is difficult on the other two?
She's gotten rougher on bullying. I have noticed that, yes.
So if the old Lily and Connor want to stay at Crystal's just to start school, is that a factor? How would you factor that into what you would like for them? Still want them all to go to mom?
I would still rather see them home, but if they wanted to stay, then I'm not gonna argue with the kids. I'd rather see them home.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, nothing further.
Can you redirect?
Who's Crystal?
My sister-in-law.
That's all.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. You may return to your seat.
No other witnesses.
Ms. Heiss.
No witnesses today, thank you.
Very well. Comments in closing, Ms. Thomas.
Thank you, Honor. I believe that I made a closing at the last hearing as well. And I just want to reincorporate that. And then for Mr. Deacon's sake, I would just like to say the agency's position is for Stormy to be returned to mother, but still under the jurisdiction of this court to see if that can help her mental health stabilize and also give the other two children an opportunity to continue to experience some healing and work in their own therapeutic processing. At this time, I think that the relationship between the parents and how that looks moving forward, whether they're in a parallel parenting situation or co-parenting situation, is really the main issue that needs to continue to be monitored and addressed moving forward, as the domestic violence in this family is really concerning and what caused the case to primarily open. So with that, we are asking the court to maintain status quo, with the exception of parenting time to be expanded throughout this review period, and maintain the goal for reunification. Thank you.
Ms. Borders.
I did make some comments last weekend or on Wednesday, but I just wanted to address just a couple matters. One, that as to any request to have the bond conditions modified, that's already been addressed, I believe, but DHS is placed into their provisions that their parties are not to have contact. I see no reason why the parties should need to have any contact regarding parenting time when parenting time is determined by DHS. So I honestly, in protecting my clients' success and working through this case service plan, actually want that no contact to remain in place. And so does my client. Now, as for the return of the children, I think my client, certainly my client has done exceptionally well within her case service plan. And we talked about that at length on Wednesday, but I believe it warrants a return of all three children. However, in discussions with my client, she understands that the alternatives for Stormy's placement would be really detrimental to Stormy's well-being. So it leaves the determination, I believe DHS, with all due respect, is doing their best to make sure that Stormy and Chanel's reunification process is not being set up for failure. However, it is very obvious that Stormy has been the one who has struggled the most with Chanel. And now the recommendation is to place Stormy with Chanel, when Chanel certainly wants all three of her children returned back to her. So I'm asking the court to consider kind of a middle ground on the review hearing as it pertains to reunification regarding the other two children. I am obviously supportive of returning Stormy to Chanel's care, but do not want to wait for 90 days to have reunification with the other two children, so long as that reunification is successful between Stormy and Chanel. There's no dispute on based on any testimony contained in the record or any of the exhibits that Chanel's appropriate and the other two children are actually bonded and also, in my opinion, ready to go home to Chanel. And the only reason why they're not doing that right now is because the children do not want to be placed with Stormy. But Chanel is their parent, and she has done everything she had to do and continues to do so in order to get reunification. So I am asking that we set a review period for the purposes of reunification of the other two children sooner than normal, because I think that it's already appropriate, and I think that my client is being really reasonable about understanding why they are only sending Stormy home at this time because of Stormy's well-being and what's in Stormy's best interest. If it were not to be Chanel where she was going to, without saying more, it would be detrimental to Stormy to be placed anywhere else. So she doesn't want to do that to Stormy and understands the reasoning of DHS, but does want to move towards reunification with the other two kids as soon as possible.
Thank you. Mr. Brooks?
Well, Your Honor, we're talking about two different levels of issues here. Let's start with the one that I can address more directly, and that is my client's parenting time, supervised or otherwise. I haven't heard anybody say that my client's a threat to his kids if he's around them. And yet I'm sitting here looking at this and his parenting time is somewhat limited. Why? Because of domestic violence, number one, but nobody has said he isn't doing a pretty good job with that. Two, housing. And that I concede is a legitimate issue. Mr. Deakins has got to do something to have an appropriate, clean, safe environment, stable environment where his kids can go. But once they're there, he doesn't appear, based on the evidence I've seen, to be any kind of a threat at all to his kids. And I think he should be given some latitude to get that rolling so that he can see his kids in a manner that he thinks is more appropriate until they can be reunified with their mother, who he also supports. The mother and the father are in agreement to the extent that they think the best interests of their children are that all three of them be placed together. The two of them are in complete agreement, and the best place for that to be is with their mom. That's a surprising amount of consensus in one of these cases. I think some weight should be given to the opinion, the joint opinion of both the mom and the dad, particularly since they're not living together. And I support this court's decision to lift any kind of a ban that keeps them from speaking. The only issue I would take with it is when you've got three kids, you got things that happen. And I think they do need to talk to each other about those things. Where I think Mrs. Deakins is concerned about issues is crossing the line into something other than talking about the kids. And I agree with her. If that's a concern to her, I think I support her concern. But just about the kids, which can be done if no other way, we can get on that computer thing that records everything they say and makes it available to the courts to keep the conversation between the lines. And I think that's a good way to get it done. But I don't know what the domestic violence history really is in this case, but it appears to be being addressed in a way that everybody approves of. And I think that says a lot. I think his parenting time should be increased. It should be unsupervised. And he would like to see his three kids, along with his wife, to his wife, and that they would all be better off because of it. I don't know anything at all, to be frank, about what issues Stormy does or doesn't have. And yes, I did hear that the other two kids don't want to be around her. None of us are perfect, I guess, but I would like to see my client, number one, get a great deal more visitation, more liberal visitation. Number two, I'd like the three kids to be in the home with their mother until we can get through this.
Ms. Heiss?
Yes, thank you. I just want to take a minute for the record to say that Stormy is not the problem or the outlier. She is a child who has experienced a significant amount of trauma, including physical abuse, emotional abuse, exposure to domestic violence, parental substance abuse, impaired parenting possibly due to mental illness, and lengthy or multiple separations from the parent, and also placement outside the home. So she's experienced this in her history, and now we're seeing the behavior. That's why we want good parenting in addition to taking care of the child's needs at the time. You don't want these things to come out later where she missed some caregiving and some things that she needed, so that now so the burden is on the parents to support the child. I don't think it's true that the other two children don't want to be around Stormy at all. I think that they would like a break of some sort, and they want to stay in this placement that they've been in for about 6 months now. It's a family member, and they feel loved and feel centered. They want to go home too, but they don't disagree that Stormy's needs are higher. You know, she pinches them and kicks them and uses swear words, and she teases Connor. She said he had a spider on his back the other day and he about flipped out, but the other sister, you know, was helping him get his shirt off and address it. But it really, this caseworker has been to the hospital with Stormy and up late nights and saw the difference the mom made when she came to the hospital. And I think we should rely on that to know that the caseworkers representing that going home for Stormy is a good idea. It is absolutely not a punishment that the other two children aren't coming home. It is meant for the best success of the family. I'm hearing that mom is trying her hardest. I don't think these people had consensus that we needed jurisdiction in the beginning, but now mom is trying to do what the counselors are advising and be in out of an unhealthy relationship, and maybe dad doesn't feel that way, but we have to give mom some distance to participate in the case service plan, which she's doing and doing a really good job. She welcomes me into her home and the kids are happy to be there. I think they'd all like to be there soon. So I have nothing else. Thank you.
Thank you. The court finds all interested parties were given notice for purposes of today's review hearing. There are quite a few things put to the court to determine or decide today, in addition to the permanency planning goal question. The permanency planning goal in this case of reunification is and continues to be appropriate. And I think the questions that have to be answered today are reflective of that. Both parents are engaged in services and appear to be making progress. I need some more information about that as we move forward to help further advise the court as well as the service providers as to how much progress is being made and the benefit from services. And I think the lack of information on those points is reflected in Ms. Heiss's concerns. We did discuss it. It was discussed, I should say, by the parties, and some information on some of those gaps was offered at the last time we came together this week previously. So the court's order is going to require at the next report period from each of the counselors for the parents, and it sounds like there's two for each parent, verification of whether or not he or she has received the most recent court report. And Ms. Francesca Madrid, some of this is for you too. I'm going to ask you to verify that the counselors have all received a copy of the court report so that they are aware of any concerns that arise from foster care monitoring and case management, progress that's being made by each parent, and any psychological evaluations should be supplied to the counselor for each person, as well as any other mental health evaluations or progress, and even as specifically as from the other counselor that might be meeting with the parent, so that there's accountability for each parent with service providers. And so that they can be informed when I start asking them questions or when our other attorneys and service providers start asking questions. So circulation of documents is very important in the next report period to those service providers. And that's because the risk of harm associated with returning the children to the primary care of either parent right now continue to be the dynamics of domestic violence in the home. We heard Ms. Heiss articulate very clearly, consistently, and carefully what Stormy's diagnoses are that were highlighted in her trauma assessments. And her experiences are really very demonstrative of the risks of harm that are associated with simply just returning the children to the parents at this time. This is a 2014 case. This is not the first time this family has been subject to court proceedings. And clearly there was a lot that happened between 2014 and the second petition, which is reflected again very broadly in the current diagnoses of the middle child. So that's the goal, is to reduce those dynamics in the home and to work on the parents' skills in navigating their own personal relationships and the relationships between parent and child. I agree with Ms. Heiss, our guardian ad litem, who's in satisfaction of her obligations, by the way, I thank you. That returning Stormy first to the care of mother is appropriate and necessary. There will be some cautions and stipulations. For example, I'll expect Ms. Madrid to do as she's already told us she wants to, which is to facilitate a family team meeting to discuss some safety planning. I'm going to add to that an accountability contract, which was recommended in her psychological evaluations prior to returning Stormy to her care, to utilize extended and overnight visitations to facilitate the transition of the return of this child into her household, and ask Ms. Madrid to watch carefully to ensure the parent and child have both demonstrated progress in the dynamics of their relationship that present a risk. Those concerns were articulated by Ms. Moore, by Ms. Heiss, and in the trauma assessment. One example is the parentification of this particular child. So I think with those shorter visits, and we'll see how that goes. Ms. Madrid's going to be the one who has to try to spearhead that. Just keep in mind, and ask Stormy and Chanel to keep in mind that those dynamics between parent and child are what will help all of us understand whether or not some of the risks of harm have been alleviated. Ms. Chanel Deacons has been working hard in therapy and in making changes in her life and her lifestyle to support wanting to remain on her own and to change those dynamics. And so we're going to put them to test. And that is also in light of the fact that this child is in need of a change. The placement where she's at is telling us, is reflecting back to us that there's too much stress there to allow her to stay there. And certainly asking Ms. Chanel Deacons to demonstrate her gained skills is a much better alternative than finding another family for Stormy Deacons to have to try to adjust to. That is a known trauma. So I appreciate the department working with Chanel Deacons to try to work that child back into her care rather than subjecting her to another move, which may require looking at an outside, a person completely outside the family. So for those reasons, I am going to authorize the return of the middle child to the home of Chanel Deacons for now. I will maintain the other two in the relative placement, and that is because I want to see the demonstration that Ms. Deacons is saying she can do, which is to be able to help that middle child manage her behaviors and manage continued boundaries between her and her husband, as well as healthy boundaries between herself and this child. So if those dynamics can be built soundly, then there is certainly better anticipated success with return of all three children onto her care in the future, which is and should be the goal here. So, but there are the stipulations around that. I like Mr. Brooks's idea of using an application to monitor the communications between these two parents, especially in light of the changes to the bond conditions that we heard about, which allow them to communicate about parenting time issues. I'll ask Ms. Madrid to see if there's any funding out there to help them pay for this, but there is an application called Our Family Wizard that would allow both parents to utilize an application on their phone to communicate, and for that communication to be visible to Ms. Madrid and to any of the attorneys that might want or need to see that. Again, to look at the dynamics between these parents to see whether or not they're co-parenting in a way that reflects progress in their case services plans. If we see those dynamics in domestic violence, power and control are easy to see, even in written communications and emails and text messages. So I think that's a great idea and a good way to allow the parents to demonstrate whether or not there's any progress being made on these services. I didn't miss that this is Mr. Deacon's third attempt to go through some of these classes and education programs. We'll see what happens with the family moving forward. Ms. Deakins wants her divorce. She wants to maintain her separation and develop her boundaries. And I respect that, and I hope that is successful for the family. Mr. Deakins has to accept that and to learn how to co-parent separately from her. And the application will hopefully help all of us understand whether or not there's progress being made in those areas. I think, again, returning one of the children rather than all three alleviate some of the stress associated with demonstrating those changes and avoid some of the potential increased stressors that the return of all children to the care of their mother at this time would certainly present, especially around parenting, co-parenting between the two. So again, I think that also supports just the return of the singular child rather than all three. That's of course also supported by our LGAL and our case worker at this time. So the court will authorize that change. All right. I think I've covered the main things that will be in an attachment to today's dispositional order. In addition to, of course, the case services plan and the advice of rights. I have covered the risk of harm associated with returning all three children to the care of either parent at this time. The relative placement is the safest and least restrictive under the conditions that the courts articulated today. I do find that reasonable efforts towards reunification are being made and spearheaded by Ms. Madrid quite effectively. Thank you for your dedication and response to the middle child as she makes her way through some of the as well. In many ways, seeing these behaviors is indicative that this child is beginning to express some of the things that need to be expressed in order for her to move forward in her therapeutic progress. So hopefully that's what's happening, and I'll look forward to service updates for the children at the next review period too, to make sure that they have the support that they need as they make their way through their own experiences and try to build some skills moving forward as well. All right. I think we've already established what our next review hearing is going to be. But just to reiterate, Tuesday, October 22nd at 1:30, we'll come together again for our third review, second permanency planning hearing. And unless there's any questions, that's all for today.
Your Honor, did you make a ruling about dad's visits?
Oh, thank you.
Sorry.
Good question. So my concern about allowing unfettered, unsupervised visits at this time is that I really don't have a good update from John Bailey or from his individual counselor on whether or not we've seen any benefit to the dynamics around domestic violence. I do have the indications in some Veritas assessments that that might be a risk-free environment. Ms. Heiss, what was your specific recommendation on that?
Your Honor, I do think he's ready for unsupervised visits. These children are verbal, and so from before to after visits, if they have anything that happened, they have a placement to talk to, they have their mother to talk to. I think they're sufficiently prepared for, and all the trauma assessments say that the bond is secure. They all want to trust that mom and dad are getting their issues together, but I don't think the resources would be appropriately used in continuing to supervise. Maybe in addition, we could supervise a visit a week, but I think they're ready for some expanded time and unsupervised, in my opinion.
All right, that's well articulated and I think well guided by the opinions of the fellow experts we have in this case. And so the court order will also reflect that I'll give DHHS the discretion, or the agency rather, the discretion to incorporate unsupervised parenting time for Mr. Deakins. And I would ask also for a family team meeting to develop that plan, of course, separately from the one with Ms. Deakins on what's going to be happening with the return of the child, the middle child, and the visits moving forward as well. So Ms. Madrid will have her work cut out for her on both parents, but I think that would probably be best. So again, a family team meeting, discretion to incorporate unsupervised parenting time. I'll look for updates on that as well at the next review. Other questions?
What time was the October 22nd review?
1:30 p.m.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I just, so we don't run into any issues, Can I request that the order just specifically state that the agency has discretion to return Stormy to Ms. Deacon's care, obviously under the supervision of the department, but then also with the discretion to begin FRP or family reunification services, please.
Yes, I can put in the order to incorporate family reunification services, certainly. My concern, Ms. Thomas, with what you've proposed for return is that there really is there's no guidance for that in the court rules. The court rules, of course, allow for a notification and a period of objection with regard to return of the child to the care of any parent. So in order to ensure that our record and the file is clear, you have two options. Number one, I will issue the official order today, which indicates the return of Stormy Deakins, understanding that before that's fully executed, that she needs to do that family team meeting, and then there would be a transition period, which I think the court rule and the court order in the attachment would adequately spell out. But for purposes of what's officially happening, your options are either I give you an order that says Stormy is returned to the care of mom, or she still remains in relative care placement, and then you utilize the court rule process.
Yeah, and I believe
Otherwise,
as you have stated, I believe as you have stated it, that's sufficient.
Okay, all right.
Thank
So
you
that
so
was
much.
what that's, all right, that's what I've tried to explain that as fast as I can in our order as well as the attachment. Any other questions? All right, thank you, everyone. Good luck. We'll see you October 22nd at 1:30.
Thank
Thank you, Your Honor.